Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a simple question. Why do you struggle to do the things you know you should do? We all have goals. We all have things we want to accomplish. Yet, for some reason, we don't always do them. We procrastinate. We make excuses. We tell ourselves, I'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow turns into next week, next month, and sometimes never. Most people believe they need to feel motivated before they can take action. They wait for inspiration to strike, thinking that once they feel the right energy, everything will fall into place. But the truth is, waiting for motivation is one of the biggest traps we fall into. The idea that motivation must come first is not only misleading, but also counterproductive. Motivation is not a reliable fuel for progress. It is fleeting, unpredictable, and often absent when we need it most. That is why action must come first. Consider a simple example. Think about going for a run early in the morning. When the alarm clock rings, the last thing you want to do is get out of bed. You feel tired, unmotivated, and sluggish. But if you push yourself to put on your running shoes and step outside, something remarkable happens. The first few steps might feel heavy, but as you keep moving, your energy starts to shift. Your body warms up, your breathing steadies, and before you know it, you're running with ease. That sense of motivation you were waiting for. It arrived after you started, not before. This is a pattern we see everywhere. Writers who struggle with writer's block often find that simply sitting down and typing, even if it's just a few messy sentences, eventually leads to a flow of ideas. People who dread going to the gym usually feel energized and accomplished once they complete a workout. Employees who procrastinate on a difficult task often realize that once they start, the work isn't as intimidating as they imagined. In all these cases, motivation didn't come before action, it came because of action. The reason this happens is rooted in psychology. Our brains are designed to resist effort. They seek comfort and avoid discomfort. When we think about doing something difficult, our minds immediately create resistance by focusing on how hard it will be. But once we start, the brain adapts. It switches from anticipating difficulty to engaging with the task. The hardest part of anything is not the work itself, but the act of starting. Once that initial resistance is overcome, everything becomes easier. Understanding this changes everything. Instead of waiting to feel inspired, we can build a habit of taking action first. Even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, movement creates momentum, and momentum fuels motivation. This is why the most successful people don't rely on motivation, they rely on discipline. They understand that action leads to progress, and progress builds motivation. Imagine someone who wants to start a business but keeps delaying it, waiting for the right moment when they feel ready. That moment may never come. But if they take the first step, whether it's researching an idea, reaching out to a mentor, or simply writing down a plan, they start building momentum. Each action, no matter how small, creates a sense of progress. That progress fuels motivation, making the next step easier. The same principle applies to personal growth. People who want to develop confidence often think they need to feel confident before they take action. But confidence doesn't come from thinking about it, it comes from doing. The more you engage in a task, the more competent you become. And the more competent you become, the more confident you feel. This shift in mindset is powerful. It removes the need to feel ready before taking action. It eliminates the excuse of waiting for motivation. It puts control back in our hands. Instead of being at the mercy of how we feel, we can take charge by simply starting. The smallest action taken consistently can lead to extraordinary results over time. Momentum is one of the most underrated forces in human behavior. The first push takes effort, but once movement starts, it sustains itself. Think about a heavy flywheel. Getting it to spin requires a significant initial effort. But once it starts moving, it picks up speed and becomes easier to turn. The same is true for our habits, our projects, and our goals. The key is to trick the brain into getting started. Instead of focusing on the entire task, focus on the next small action. Instead of thinking about running 5 miles, focus on putting on your shoes. Instead of stressing over writing an entire report, commit to writing 1 sentence. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by cleaning the house, start with 1 corner of a room. Once you take that first step, your brain shifts. The task no longer feels as overwhelming and motivation kicks in. What separates successful people from those who remain stuck is not talent or intelligence. It is the ability to take action before they feel like it. They do what needs to be done, regardless of whether they are in the mood. They understand that motivation is a result of effort, not a prerequisite for it, and they use that knowledge to their advantage. The human brain is designed to seek comfort and avoid discomfort. This is a survival mechanism that has been hardwired into us for thousands of years. In ancient times, avoiding discomfort often meant staying safe, sticking to familiar places, conserving energy, and steering clear of danger. But in the modern world, this instinct often works against us. Growth, progress, and success all require stepping outside of our comfort zones. Yet, our brains resist, convincing us to stay where it feels safe and easy. This is why so many people struggle to take action on their goals. They wait until they feel comfortable, but comfort rarely leads to achievement. The discomfort that comes with doing something challenging is not a sign that you should stop. It is a sign that you are growing. When people feel resistance, they often interpret it as a warning to back off. They assume that if something feels hard, they must not be ready. But discomfort is not a signal to quit, it is proof that you are pushing your limits. Every time you experience discomfort, you are stretching yourself, expanding your capabilities, and developing new skills. The people who succeed in any field are not the ones who avoid discomfort, but the ones who learn to embrace it. Consider the process of building muscle. When you exercise, your muscles experience tiny tears. It is uncomfortable, sometimes even painful, but it is exactly this discomfort that triggers growth. Without the strain, the muscle has no reason to strengthen. The same principle applies to personal and professional growth. If everything feels easy, it means you are not challenging yourself enough to improve. The discomfort is necessary. It is a sign that you are on the right track. Think about the first time you tried something new. Maybe it was learning a skill, speaking in front of an audience, or starting a difficult project. It felt uncomfortable, even awkward, but as you kept going, the discomfort started to fade. You became more familiar, more confident. Over time, what once felt difficult became second nature. This is the process of growth. Every expert, every leader, every successful person has gone through this cycle. They started as beginners, felt discomfort, pushed through it, and eventually mastered their craft. The problem is that most people stop before they reach the other side of discomfort. They feel the resistance and assume that they are not capable. They tell themselves, maybe this isn't for me, and retreat back to what feels safe. But those who push through discomfort, despite the initial struggle, are the ones who break through. They understand that the hardest part of anything is the beginning. Once you get past that initial barrier, everything starts to feel easier. This is why comfort is the enemy of growth. It keeps people stagnant. It convinces them that where they are is good enough when they are capable of so much more. The difference between those who achieve extraordinary things and those who don't is not talent or intelligence. It is the willingness to endure discomfort. The greatest leaders, innovators, and athletes did not succeed because it was easy for them. They succeeded because they kept going when it was hard. Our resistance to discomfort is often fueled by fear. The fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of the unknown. But fear is not a stop sign. It is an indicator that you are stepping into new territory. Every meaningful achievement involves some level of uncertainty. No one has all the answers at the start. No one feels completely confident before they begin. The confidence comes from taking action, even when you feel unsure. The more you expose yourself to discomfort, the more resilient you become. Discomfort also acts as a filter. It separates those who are merely interested from those who are truly committed. Many people say they want success, but when they face the inevitable struggles, they back down. Those who succeed are not the ones who avoid challenges, but the ones who face them head on. They know that discomfort is temporary, but the rewards of perseverance last far longer. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop viewing discomfort as something to escape and start seeing it as something to embrace. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations, engage in them. Instead of running from challenges, step toward them. Instead of backing away from uncertainty, lean into it. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you become stronger, wiser, and more capable. Over time, what once seemed intimidating will become normal, and you will realize that you were always capable of more than you thought. Starting something new always feels like the hardest part. The anticipation, the doubts, and the uncertainty create a mental barrier that makes taking action seem overwhelming. The human brain is wired to protect us from discomfort. So when we face something unfamiliar, our instinct is to hesitate. We overthink, we procrastinate, and we convince ourselves that we need to feel ready before we begin. But readiness is an illusion. No one ever truly feels ready. The difference between those who make progress and those who remain stuck is that successful people take action despite the discomfort. The initial resistance is always the greatest. Think about a rocket launching into space. The most fuel is burned in the first few seconds just to break free from gravity. Once it escapes the pull of Earth, the journey becomes much easier. The same is true for any goal. The beginning requires the most energy, but once momentum is built, everything starts to flow naturally. The first day at the gym feels difficult, but after a few weeks, it becomes part of the routine. Writing the first page of a book feels intimidating, but once the words start flowing, ideas come more easily. Making the first cold call in sales is nerve-wracking, but after a few calls, confidence grows. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming they need motivation before they can start. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. If action is dependent on motivation, progress will be inconsistent at best. However, something powerful happens when action is taken first. Even the smallest step forward creates momentum. Once the body and mind are engaged, motivation follows. It is not the cause of action, it is the result of it. Taking action signals to the brain that something important is happening, and it starts to adapt. A great way to overcome the difficulty of starting is to reduce the size of the first step. Many people set enormous goals, which can feel overwhelming. Instead of focusing on the entire journey, breaking it down into tiny, manageable steps makes it easier to start. If the goal is to run a marathon, the first step is simply putting on running shoes and stepping outside. If the goal is to start a business, the first step might be writing down one idea. If the goal is to learn a new language, the first step could be studying one word. These small steps remove the mental resistance associated with big goals. Once the first step is taken, the second step becomes easier, and soon progress begins to build. Fear of failure is another major reason people hesitate to start. The fear of making mistakes, looking foolish, or not meeting expectations holds them back. But failure is not the enemy, inaction is. Every successful person has failed multiple times before achieving greatness. The difference is that they started, learned from their failures, and kept going. Avoiding action to prevent failure is actually the quickest way to guarantee no progress at all. Taking imperfect action is far better than waiting for the perfect moment. Perfectionism is another common trap. Many people delay starting because they want everything to be just right. They want the perfect plan, the perfect timing, and the perfect conditions, but perfection is a moving target. There is no such thing as a flawless beginning. The best way to improve is to start messy and refine along the way. No great writer wrote their best book on the first draft. No great athlete became a champion after one practice. Excellence comes from experience, and experience only comes from starting. Once momentum is created, the challenge shifts from starting to maintaining consistency. This is where habits become essential. Making progress should not be dependent on feelings or motivation. It should be built into a routine. The more frequently an action is repeated, the easier it becomes. Over time, what once felt difficult turns into second nature. The gym becomes part of the daily schedule. Writing becomes a habit. Practicing a new skill feels normal. The effort required to start is no longer necessary because momentum carries everything forward. The process of starting and pushing past resistance applies to every area of life. Whether it is pursuing a dream, developing a new habit, or making a difficult decision, the hardest part is always the beginning. But once that first step is taken, everything else becomes easier. The key is to act before the mind has time to create excuses. The longer something is delayed, the harder it becomes to start. Taking immediate action, even if it is small, disrupts the cycle of hesitation and builds the foundation for long-term success. Successful people do not wait for motivation to strike before taking action. They understand that waiting to feel like it is a losing game. If action were only taken when the mood was right, nothing meaningful would ever be accomplished. Instead of relying on emotions, they develop the discipline to do what needs to be done, regardless of whether they feel like it in the moment. This mindset is what separates those who achieve their goals from those who remain stuck in the cycle of procrastination and excuses. The human brain is wired to seek comfort and avoid discomfort. It naturally gravitates toward tasks that are easy and enjoyable while resisting anything that requires effort or uncertainty. This is why people often struggle to start difficult projects, go to the gym, or follow through on commitments. The brain looks for ways to conserve energy and avoid discomfort, convincing people that they will do it later when they feel more ready. But readiness rarely comes. If action is always postponed until motivation arrives, progress will be slow or non-existent. This is why discipline is a more reliable strategy than motivation. Discipline is the ability to take action even when it is inconvenient or uncomfortable. It means doing the work when it is not exciting, showing up when there is no immediate reward, and staying committed when distractions are everywhere. It is easy to be productive when inspiration is high, but true progress happens when action is taken consistently, regardless of external conditions. Consider a professional athlete. They do not train only when they feel like it. They follow a schedule, even on days when they are tired or unmotivated. A musician does not wait to be in the perfect creative mood before practicing. They play their instrument daily, knowing that mastery comes from repetition. A writer does not complete a book by only writing when inspiration strikes. They sit down and write even when the words do not come easily. The common thread among all high achievers is that they act despite their feelings. There is a common misconception that discipline is about forcing oneself to suffer. In reality, discipline is about building habits that make action automatic. The more something is repeated, the easier it becomes. A person who struggles to wake up early will find it difficult at first, but over time their body adjusts. Someone who initially hates working out will find that after a few weeks it feels natural. What starts as an effort becomes a routine, and what once required willpower eventually becomes second nature. One of the most powerful ways to strengthen discipline is by reducing the decision-making process. When people rely on motivation, they constantly ask themselves, do I feel like doing this today? That question opens the door to hesitation and excuses. Discipline removes the question altogether. Instead of deciding whether to act, the decision is already made. The task is completed because it is simply part of the daily routine. There is no debate, no internal struggle, just action. Another key factor in developing discipline is focusing on identity rather than outcomes. Instead of saying, I have to exercise today, a disciplined person thinks, I am someone who exercises. Instead of saying, I need to work on my business, they think, I am an entrepreneur. When actions align with identity, discipline becomes easier to maintain. It is no longer about forcing oneself to do something. It is about living in alignment with who one wants to be. The biggest challenge for most people is overcoming the initial resistance. The first few steps toward any goal feel the hardest. The brain comes up with countless reasons to delay or avoid action, but once movement begins, momentum takes over. A person who struggles to start a workout often finds that after the first few minutes, it becomes easier. A writer who forces themselves to type the first sentence often ends up writing far more than expected. The hardest part is simply beginning. Fear and discomfort are often mistaken for signs to stop. Many people assume that if something feels difficult or uncomfortable, it must not be the right time or they must not be ready. But discomfort is not a warning to quit. It is a signal of growth. Every successful person has faced moments of doubt, frustration, and resistance. What sets them apart is their ability to act despite those feelings. They understand that emotions are temporary, but the results of discipline last far longer. By taking control of actions instead of waiting for the right feelings, progress becomes inevitable. There will always be days when motivation is absent, but those who rely on discipline do not allow that to stop them. They show up, put in the work, and keep moving forward, knowing that success is built on consistency, not fleeting bursts of inspiration. Every action taken reinforces an identity. When someone repeatedly engages in a behavior, they begin to see themselves as the kind of person who does that thing. This is how habits shape identity, and how identity, in turn, influences future actions. The choices made each day are not just about achieving results, they are about defining who a person becomes. The more a person acts in alignment with a certain identity, the stronger that identity becomes. A person who consistently exercises starts to see themselves as someone who prioritizes health. A writer who sits down to write every day begins to believe they are a writer, not just someone who occasionally writes. A leader who makes difficult decisions regularly starts to embody confidence and decisiveness. Identity is not something people are born with, it is something they build through action. Every action is a vote for the kind of person someone wants to become. This is why taking action is so important, even in small ways. Each time a step is taken toward a goal, it reinforces a belief about who that person is. The more a person acts in alignment with their desired identity, the more natural those behaviors become. Over time, they stop feeling like effort and start feeling like second nature. The challenge for many people is that they allow their past to dictate their identity instead of shaping it through action. They think I've never been disciplined, or I'm just not good at this, and those thoughts become self-fulfilling. But identity is not fixed. It is shaped by repeated behaviors. A person who believes they are lazy often behaves in ways that confirm that belief. They put off tasks, avoid responsibility, and reinforce the narrative that they are not productive. But the moment they take action, even in a small way, they begin to challenge that identity. If they complete one task, they have proof that they are capable. If they take action again the next day, they strengthen that belief. Over time, they no longer see themselves as lazy, they see themselves as someone who takes action. The mistake many people make is waiting for a shift in identity before taking action. They think, once I feel confident, I'll start speaking up, or once I feel disciplined, I'll start waking up early. But it doesn't work that way. Identity does not come first, action does. Confidence is built by speaking up, even when it feels uncomfortable. Discipline is built by taking action, even when motivation is low. The more those actions are repeated, the more natural they become. This is why even the smallest actions matter. If a person wants to become a reader, reading just one page a day is enough to start reinforcing that identity. If someone wants to be a runner, running for just 2 minutes a day begins to shift their self-perception. These small actions might seem insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate over time, creating a deep and lasting change in identity. Negative actions also reinforce identity in the same way. When someone skips a workout, they reinforce the idea that they are not consistent. When they procrastinate on a task, they reinforce the belief that they struggle with focus. Every choice made strengthens a particular identity. This is why consistency is so powerful. The goal is not to be perfect, but to ensure that most actions align with the desired identity. Momentum is a powerful force in identity change. Each time an action is repeated, it becomes easier to repeat again. The brain starts to recognize patterns and automate behaviors. What once required effort becomes effortless. This is how people go from struggling with a habit to embodying it fully. They no longer have to push themselves to do it. It simply becomes part of who they are. Successful people understand this and use it to their advantage. They do not rely on willpower alone. They build habits that align with their identity. They take action every day, even in small ways, to reinforce the kind of person they want to be. They do not wait for the right moment or for motivation to strike. They take control of their actions, knowing that every step forward shapes who they become. Progress is not about making giant leaps overnight. It is about making small, consistent improvements over time. The most successful people in any field understand that real growth happens through continuous effort, not sudden bursts of inspiration. The key to long-term success is not intensity, but consistency. Small actions, when repeated consistently, compound into massive results. This is why showing up every day, even when the progress feels slow, is far more effective than waiting for the perfect moment to make a big move. The biggest mistake many people make is assuming that success is about dramatic transformations. They believe they have to completely change their lives in an instant to see results. This mindset often leads to frustration and burnout. Instead of sustaining progress, they push themselves too hard in the beginning, struggle to keep up, and eventually quit. True success is not about quick fixes, it is about building systems and routines that make progress inevitable. The power of consistency is best understood through the concept of compound growth. Just like money invested over time grows exponentially, small efforts, when repeated daily, create extraordinary results. A person who reads for just 10 minutes a day will have read dozens of books by the end of the year. A person who writes 1 page a day will have written a book in a few months. A person who exercises for 20 minutes daily will see major improvements in their health over time. None of these actions feel significant in the moment, but their impact becomes undeniable when accumulated over time. One of the biggest challenges people face is staying consistent when results are not immediately visible. When someone starts working toward a goal, they expect to see quick results. If the progress is slow, they get discouraged and give up. But the reality is that success follows an exponential curve. In the beginning, progress is almost invisible. It feels like the effort is not paying off, but those who persist eventually experience a breakthrough. The problem is that most people quit too soon, never reaching the point where their efforts begin to compound. A great example of this is water boiling. When heating water, it may stay at the same temperature for a long time before suddenly reaching 100 degrees Celsius and turning into steam. The temperature was rising the whole time, but the transformation only became visible at the tipping point. The same is true for personal growth and success. The work done in the early stages might not show immediate results, but it is laying the foundation for a significant breakthrough. Consistency requires patience and trust in the process. It means continuing to put in the effort even when there is no immediate reward. It means understanding that every small action contributes to a larger goal. Many people underestimate what they can achieve in a year, but overestimate what they can achieve in a single day. They want instant results, but real success comes from sustained effort over long periods. One way to stay consistent is by making actions so small that they feel effortless. Many people set goals that are too big, which makes them easy to abandon. But if a goal is broken down into tiny steps, it becomes much easier to stick with.